Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint, the show with an attitude. Today we have an interesting show, which is what I always say because all my shows are interesting. Today we have Miss Kelly Teves, who has been a guest on our show in the past, and this one is going to be on a different subject. Miss Teves is a wedding planner, and so we're going to be talking about planning weddings. And we hope that those of you who are still interested in getting married will learn something from this. As you know, weddings have decreased over the years, and divorces have increased. And I like to think that the job that Ms. Teves does keeps people together a little longer, at least long enough to have children and bills. So, without further ado, Ms. Kelly Teves, welcome.
Hi, Tom. Thank you. Nice being here.
Okay. All right, let's start off with your wedding planner. I mean, what else do you do? I mean, is it are there other things, I mean, that you plan?
There are a number of things that I plan. While I specialize mainly in weddings, I also plan other types of events such as corporate, birthday parties, baby showers, wedding showers, bachelor and bachelorette parties, grand openings, essentially any sort of event that brings people together in a celebratory way. I'm there.
Now, the culture of a wedding planner, I think is special. I mean, years ago, people planned their own weddings and they rose or fell on what they planned, and I can see the need for the type of service that you and others who are wedding planners offer. Now, who is it that's most likely to use a wedding planner? I'm not talking about, obviously there are people who want to get married, and they are the most, who most likely uses a wedding planner?
Well, most people that use wedding planners either have very busy lives, which is the situation with most of my clients. Those who don't have family members who live close by where they want to have the wedding planned, hence destination weddings. But for the most part, it's people who have no previous experience in being married and planning a wedding, and they're completely confused and befuddled by the amount of work and details that go into planning one.
So, in other words, people who know how to plan a wedding don't come to see you.
Essentially. Well, there is one case where they do come to me if they're looking for a day of coordination. And those are typically the couples who spent months or years planning their wedding, and they're, feeling a bit apprehensive and a little chaotic about whether how they're planning up until that day is going to fall into place. A lot of them have their worries and concerns. What if this goes wrong and that goes wrong? So in the case of hiring a day of coordinator, such as myself, you'd have a professional there who has seen the ups and downs and knows how to handle the damages or damage control that goes on the day of a wedding.
That sounds like a very useful thing to do. Now, what is it that is usually the first thing that the potential betrothed ask of you? What do they normally ask you when they come to see you?
They normally ask me, "What do you do?"
What do you do? Okay.
Yep.
And what's the first thing you ask them? Can you afford me?
Very funny. I actually have my clients go through a bit of a questionnaire process before we even meet for a consultation. And what that does is that gives me a background with regards to what they're looking for, how they're envisioning their wedding to be, as well as a little background story about who they are as a couple and what they like and don't like. So when we meet for a consultation, I have a better idea of the kind of services that they're looking for, how much work they already have done, and it gives me an idea of their personality and whether we're going to click as both, a client in a client business type of relationship.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was the first job that you ever did?
The first job as a wedding planner?
As a wedding planner, not
because that's totally unrelated.
That's wide open. That's like open, right? You could jump into that. But go ahead.
Right.
Well, when was the first time you did wedding planning for someone's wedding?
Okay, so wedding-wise, my first wedding that I planned was my own. I was very young, 22. But before then, I had experience as an event planner, which it actually goes back to my years in high school.
You started in high school?
I started in high school. I joined the prom committee, and I was in charge of choosing the favors for our prom. And I was part of a team where we kind of divided up the tasks of who was responsible for what throughout the planning of the prom for that upcoming year.
And you were hooked.
I was hooked ever since then, I must say.
What is it that you like about it?
I love everything about it, the details that go into it, the creativity, the organizational aspect of things, connecting with other like-minded people who are also passionate about planning weddings and events.
And you said that you did other kinds of events. Just give me some idea of what other kinds of events you've done.
So one of my first events was, besides the prom committee, I had planned a grand opening carnival for a chiropractor's office in Seekonk. And that was a lot of fun because the doctor who asked me to plan this for him basically gave me a lot of creative liberation with regards to how to create the event. His goal and mission was to bring in more patients to his practice, as well as connecting with the local businesses. So with that, I was able to connect with local companies who were interested in donating to the events. I did all the stationery design, from invitations to flyers and posters. I learned how to negotiate contracts to get the best deals to fit within our budget. We had pony rides, we had local celebrities, antique cars, music, donated food, bicycles, and it was just a lot of fun. And it was one of those things that completely came naturally to me. And looking back on it, especially that day, as I do with all of my events, I sit back for a moment and I just sit back in awe in admiration of, whoa, I just did that.
Sounds like you have a lot of fun doing that.
I really do.
Yeah. Now, the marketing aspect of it, once you have a project, you market those that need marketing, obviously. I mean, not a wedding per se, but other kinds of events. You have to market those events. And so you've learned a lot about marketing, right?
I've learned a bit about marketing and promotions. I must say that's probably the part of wedding and event planning that I don't care for as much.
Oh, you don't.
I don't. I'm actually not a very social person. I'm very much an introvert, which is probably why I love the planning aspect of things so much, because I'm kind of in my own world doing what I need to do.
Okay.
But as far as like fundraisers, for example, and having to get out there and market the actual event to bring in, people to donate and people to attend the event, it's a bit of a challenge, but I've done it.
How broad is the industry? How many wedding planners are out there? Is it something that a lot of people do, or is it wedding planners far and few between? And
it's something that a lot of people do. I find that, especially in interviewing for assistants, I find a lot of people come to me with this vision of this really glamorous job, which it can be, but there's a lot of hard work that goes in behind the scenes there. I lost track of the question. Oh, yes. So a lot of people, which is how I started in wedding planning, have been married. They plan their own weddings and they think, that was easy, I can do that myself. So a lot of people do try and get into the wedding planning business, either working for someone or trying to start their own business. And a majority of them fail and quit within the first year.
Okay, obviously there's another aspect to this. It's a business, and have you learned a great deal about running a business and doing that sort of thing?
I have learned quite a bit of running a business. Everything from interviewing clients, interviewing possible assistants, network meetings with other vendors in the industry. Accounting, business, marketing. There's a lot that goes into it.
Are you concerned that doing this show is going to expose you to further competition in your industry?
I have a very positive outlook when it comes to competition in the business world. I personally have the perspective of there's enough work and enough money to go around. And if one particular couple doesn't want to book with me, maybe we don't have that connection, they'll book with someone else. And I'm actually okay with that.
What's the most interesting wedding that you've planned?
Ooh, that is a very good question. I personally specialize in planning very offbeat, non-traditional weddings, especially when I started my company, Angelic Affairs. Up until then, I planned a lot of traditional weddings. So when I started my company, I moved out to Los Angeles, where I had more creative and innovative freedom. And I
Was that because of the air out there?
Must be. I don't know what it is. But all I know is a lot of the ideas that I had here in New England up until that point were just not being used in the most productive way. People thought out here going with purple instead of pink was being different. And for me, I had a lot of outlandish ideas that, like I said, couldn't put into use here. Hence why I moved to Los Angeles, where people are a bit more open and creative and free, and they really crave something different. Hence my first wedding, which luckily for me, I did get published. But when the couple first came to me, I must say I was a bit scared.
That was your first job?
My first job with my company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I get you.
And this particular couple came to me, a very sweet bride, and she came to me saying, I want a rainbow-colored quinceañera gown. And I said, okay.
Rainbow-colored what?
Quinceañera gown.
Quinceañera.
Yes. It's like a ball gown that girls typically wear.
Oh, yeah, on their 15th birthday.
Yes. Yep,
Yeah.
in the Latin culture.
Were they Hispanic?
They were not Hispanic. They were, nope, they were actually very, very white, very American.
Because I've been to a quinceañera. I used to be I was asked to be the master of ceremonies some time ago, years ago. And in the Hispanic community, it was, not just one girl who was turning 15, and there'd be maybe 20 of them.
Right.
And then they would crown a queen. And my job was to announce them and to pin the bouquet and the little prize thing on the winner and put the crown on her head. I got a picture like that. But it was so much fun. And in certain communities, this happens every time somebody turns 15. So that's
Exactly.
that's quite a bit of pomp and circumstances. If you can tell me, what was the worst? Where did you experience the most difficulty in planning a wedding, and why?
Ooh, I would have to say also our first wedding in Los Angeles. Once I got a hold of, their story and what they were envisioning and got into the designing and planning aspect of things, I had set up a lot of meetings with the venue's owner, as well as the caterer, and everything was on point up until the day of the wedding, where the venue decided to tell me that the caterer wasn't allowed to use the kitchen in the venue without having the insurance papers sent over 2 weeks before. With all the meetings that we had up until that point, that
no one
came
had
up.
ever mentioned it, right?
No one had ever mentioned it. Up until 2 hours before the wedding, we're being told, oh, the caterer can't use the food. The caterer can't use the kitchen to cook their food.
Okay.
And we had a celebrity chef, so it was very embarrassing, kind of shocking to have to go through something like this. It was very unprofessional, on the side of the venue. But of course, that reflects poorly on me as the wedding planner because it was something that I should have known. However,
they didn't tell you.
They didn't tell me, so it didn't seem like it would be a problem. However, we live and learn. At the same time, the couple decided to change the wedding layout as far as the table seating arrangements the night before the wedding without telling me. Which, to a wedding planner, doing that and not letting her know in advance is a big problem. Because as guests are coming in and being seated for the reception, well, we have 20 guests who don't have a table. So that was a bit stressful. And
I've seen that happen quite a few times in my years of going to weddings.
Have
I've
you?
seen where people would come in and there was not an assigned seat for them, or there wasn't enough. They had to bring out more tables, chairs, and the like. I mean, the worst of that is not having enough food.
Yes.
Have you had that experience?
As far as not having enough food, no, fortunately, because caterers, especially when we're working with professionals, have encountered, on numerous occasions, I'm sure in their past, to make sure there was more than enough food to go around.
What do they normally make, like 10% over? Or?
I think they usually do 10 to 20% over, depending on the number of guests that are attending the wedding and depending on the setup of the wedding, if it'll be a buffet or if it's going to be seated. If it's a buffet, they have a little bit more room to make extra food. If it's seated, it becomes a little bit more difficult at that point to have extra food for guests.
So in the case where you've set a particular number with the food vendors and they go over by 10 to 20%, is that what you said?
Yes.
And I'm interested in knowing if the number of people you projected show up and no more, what happens to that extra food?
Oh, well, I came up with a very brilliant idea for that. What I usually ask my clients to do is to donate the leftover food to a local homeless shelter or hospice, to some kind of a group or an organization where people are lacking in food.
You know that in recent years they frown upon that. I know in Providence they were saying that there was a liability to donate food because you don't know what's in it and all that. When I used to do fundraisers and things like that when I was in public office, we would, if there was anything left over, the food, we would donate it to a food pantry or, homeless shelter or whatever. And then suddenly, I think maybe about, I don't know, quite a while back, they stopped doing that. and they said the reason was that, if someone got ill from eating that food, there would be a liability on the part of whoever provided it, and also on the part of the facility or the organization. So they stopped doing that. I don't know if you know that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
No, I figured it would be, the responsibility of the venue that would be distributing the food. We haven't encountered that situation yet, but it's
I
definitely
hope
something
they
we'll look
change that,
into.
honestly, because there are a lot of you don't want food to go to waste, especially good
Right.
food by some amazing caterer. That's not
Exactly.
something that people get every day. But when they have that kind of thing, it gets to be a little treat. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody getting sick from the food that was donated to them.
Right.
But I know that it became a concern. I was worried about it because I said, you kind of cut your demand by a certain amount, and you got that, and where's the food go? There are people
Yeah.
who are starving out there, or who never had those kinds of entrees before, who might like to get a chance to taste a filet mignon or whatever it is,
Right.
and to be told you can't give it to them, and it goes in the garbage, that's a sin, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, I personally think if you're going to be eating food, then you at least have the common sense to ask what's in it. And hopefully, we usually, when we do donate food, we do have little menu cards that we provide so they know what each of the food is.
Now, what is the most expensive wedding that you've done? And to what extent?
Most expensive wedding is probably about $50,000, which is
$50,000 or 50,000 people?
$50,000.
Okay.
$50,000, 200 guests, which, in hearing about celebrity weddings that I'm sure you read in the tabloids, they can go upwards of like $1 million. So 50,000 around here, yes, sounds like a lot. But it all depends on the venue that you're booking, the types of vendors that you're hiring, how much decor and details that you want going into the wedding, and of course, how many guests will be in attendance.
Now, not to give away any of the trade secrets, do you have to barter with the vendors in terms of the price of the food, and the vendors in terms of the price of the venue and all of that? Is that part of what you do?
Sometimes, yes. That's actually a really good controversial question, because in the wedding industry, some people feel like, every vendor and every venue has their own set price, and no, a wedding planner can't negotiate anything. However, in my experiences, I've seen that anything can be negotiable. Most things, for example. Let's say I have a client who is looking for a certain type of photographer, but according to her budget analysis, she comes about $500 short. With some of the vendors that I work with, some of them do give me kind of a kickback as a thank you fee for referring clients to them.
A kickback, that's not very good characterization.
True. However, the way I handle it in a very ethical way. I don't only refer clients to vendors who are going to give me money in return. What I do is, when interviewing with the client and figuring out what they're looking for, I then go out and do research for each client individually, and I refer them to at least 3 to 6 different vendors. Some do give me a percentage back, some don't.
Bakshish, it's called in the Middle East.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Good to know. Learned something new today. So what I do is I let them choose who they're most interested in. I include pros and cons of each different vendor, their price points, and let's say they do choose a vendor that I get a little percentage back from, but oh no, they can't afford this photographer based on what their budget is at that point. At which point, the kind person that I am actually takes my percentage and asks the photographer to take that percentage off of my client's fee rather than giving me the money. Yeah.
That's why you call it Angelic Affairs, I think.
Of course. We're a very ethical company. It's what we do.
Well, that's a good thing. I imagine the people who want to get married would be interested in your services and the services of other wedding planners. How much of your business is generated by word of mouth?
Oh, gosh. About 10 to 20%.
Ah.
Not as much as you might think. Again, it depends on the type of vendor in the industry. Because a wedding planner isn't necessarily a must-have item on anyone's wedding planning list, it's actually harder to get clients through word of mouth. Yep.
That's interesting. I think the next time I get married, I'll use a wedding planner. Three's a charm, No. I'm not getting out of this marriage. But at some point, I've been thinking over the years of, having a ceremony again, I've been married for 34 years, and I've been with my wife for 40 years.
Aww.
So I think at some point, pretty soon, before I walk off into the sunset, I might, throw a little bash and have somebody come over and do that. So I'll keep you in mind.
Well, I think you should. I'd be disappointed if you don't.
Well, I don't know. Now, with all your experience of negotiating with all these various people, and I get the sense that it's not just you, but people in the industry have to do this as well. I think a lot of experience with negotiating. Maybe we ought to get you to go and negotiate the Iran deal.
Bring it on. I don't know how well I'll do there, but I'll try.
Now, are more people utilizing the services of a wedding planner than used to?
Yes, I've been finding that to be the case, especially once couples go out and do research with regards to what a wedding planner does. Some people think a wedding planner just steps in and takes hold of your wedding and plans everything the way they want it. Whereas what's happening now is people are becoming more and more busier with life, that they start interviewing and communicating with wedding planners to learn about what services they have to offer. And they're learning that, a good wedding planner anyway, shouldn't just take your wedding and create it the way they want it to be. They should do it with you in mind and plan it with you because essentially it's their day. It's not the wedding planner's day, it's the couple's day.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier that you do an interview. Is it normal that you would meet with one of the parties as opposed to both of the parties?
It is normal. It all depends.
And is it usually the man or the woman who does that?
It's usually the woman, and the woman will either come with their parents, their fiance, or a friend of theirs, or sometimes a whole bunch of people.
Okay. Well, we're at the end of the show. I hope everybody has learned a bit about weddings that maybe you didn't know. But if you didn't know, now you know. Very complicated situation, can be very well facilitated by someone in this business as Ms. Teves is. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again. And I hope you learned something today about connubial bliss, because that's it. Bye-bye.